Hello, I'm Joshua Gordon. I'm the founder of the Sports Conflict Institute. I'm joined today by Jordan McNamara, a professional runner. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy to be here.
So you get to experience sports conflict from the inside as an athlete, and one of the topics that comes up a lot in my world is the idea of performance-enhancing drugs, and in particular track and field, and even right now with the Tour de France and some of what Lance Armstrong became more famous for over time, brings us to the issue of a lot of people and their concerns about it. And so that's a topic I'm hoping to take on, but before we do that, I'm hoping that you'll actually give a little background about yourself and how you became a professional runner and what you do today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a graduate from the University of Oregon, graduated in 2010, and basically just started pursuing a dream from then on to try and become world class. And since then, just been a man on a mission. And yeah, I'm a 352 miler, run 334 for 1500, and with goals of making the Olympic team in 2016. So that's my everyday kind of mission statement. Out there training twice a day, doing the best I can to maximize my own capacity.
So fantastic. So you're obviously well aware of some of these challenges in your sport, and certainly when we hear times like what you run, people are often amazed at how those things happen, right? And one of the unfortunate things that started to happen over the last decade plus is that people start to question the competitive side of the sport. And so can you talk about, from your perspective, some of the challenges the sport faces around performance-enhancing drugs, and then we'll maybe get a little more personal about things you've seen or heard or those kind of things.
Sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day that the problem that the sport has, and almost any sport, is that the risks really don't outweigh the rewards. And sorry, my dog's drinking water over there. I mean, if an athlete cheats, say, Ben Johnson, for instance, and I mean any big athlete, I mean, the reward is massive. It's extremely lucrative, and and often if they get caught, there's a 1-year ban, a 2-year ban, maybe even a 4-year ban. But even at the end of the day, look at Lance Armstrong. He was busted, yet he still goes home to a $1 million house. So at the end of the day, what lesson are we really telling athletes? Are we really telling them that they shouldn't cheat? I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to a moral decision, because it's a game of cat and mouse between the people who use and the testers, and the people who use are often so motivated by that financial incentive that they'll do just about anything to stay 1 foot ahead of the testers. And there's a whole lot of athletes and very, very few testers. So it's an uphill ball. It's an uphill game for those trying to compete cleanly and do it the right way. But at the end of the day, I take great pride in knowing that everything I've done because I just had to work my butt off. And it's very, very, very hard to get rich in this sport. And if that happens, great. If not, I'm very, very satisfied with the fact that the times that I've run have been times that have been earned the right way.
But to what extent do you, as an athlete, play the same guessing game that we do as fans about who's clean, who's not clean, and suspicions? To what extent does that occupy your mind space when you're out there?
Zero, honestly. It has nothing to do with me, and if I dwell on it and I start to think, oh man, this is so unfair, it's just going to lessen my abilities that much more. All I can control is me. So every day I just try and do the best I can with what tools I have, and yeah, to this point it's treating me pretty well. It's pretty cool to get to this level and know that I'm within arm's reach of guys, and I've done it completely clean, completely naturally, and that it is possible to do it without the use of performance-enhancing drugs.
What about those who have been busted? What's the reception like when they do return to the sport? Someone like a Justin Gatlin, who obviously spent time away from the sport because of tests that came back positive. What's the reception like when they return to the sport from a fellow athlete's perspective?
Yeah, I can't speak for other athletes, but I'm a big believer that if everyone makes mistakes, everyone's human, even the very best athletes, as much as they are idolized and worshipped, they're normal people at the end of the day. People make mistakes, and if you serve your time, you go through your punishment, you reflect, you do whatever, and you come back and you're sincere about bettering the sport and doing the best you can and doing it correctly this time, more power to you. I think it's pretty impressive that Gatlin has been able to come back and assume the dominance that he has. But even with that being said, there are studies out there saying that if you dope once, even if you come back clean, you're at an advantage compared to other athletes. So there's that to be considered. But at this point, like I said, I'm not really too interested in reading up on all the scientific facts when I have my own stuff to deal with the right way. But if you serve your time, I believe everyone deserves a second chance.
Right. And from your perspective, how prevalent do you think it is as a problem in the sport? I know, when I've talked to Travis Tigert from USADA, his perspective is very strongly that it's pervasive, and not just with professional athletes, but with amateur athletes as well. And I wanted to see if from an athlete's perspective, you have that same visibility into it, or for you, it's not something that you see often or even think about often.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have never seen anything with my own eyes. Do I think it's something that is very prevalent within our sport? Within distance running, I don't think it's very common. Within sprinting, I think sometimes there's a little more influence there that can negatively affect an athlete's judgment. So yeah, that's all I'd really say about that.
And what about the topic? One of the things that people have started to tune in more on, and actually Major League Baseball just had a fairly damning report talking about how there was the therapeutic use exemptions, and that Alex Rodriguez actually was given permission to use testosterone and some other replacement for what they're deeming a medical condition. You could make the argument pretty quickly that some of that was self-imposed by other medicine that he was taking. What about, we know that in track and field there are a number of athletes on therapeutic use exemptions, and certainly the rule is in place to help people get access to medication that they need for legitimate reasons. But what are your perspectives on that? Because that certainly has the ability to unlevel the playing field that you're all operating under.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a hard one, because I think every situation is different. I think a TUE that is, first off, declaring something on a TUE is a good step forward in and of itself, and it shows you're not trying to really hide anything, at least not as much as someone who's trying to get away with it in secret. But obviously, I think anything that is 100% medicinal in nature should be allowed. I mean, yeah, I think so. As long as it's not some absurdly advantageous enhancement, as long as it's something that helps a person compete at 100%, just like every other healthy athlete is able to, I don't see a problem.
Yeah, one of the challenges that's been raised, to me at least, was, so let's say you have a condition, whether it's a thyroid condition or asthma, or something as simple as having low testosterone levels. The question is, at what point do you return someone through medication? If it's testosterone, do you bring them to the lower level of it, or do you bring them up to the upper allowable limits? And certainly there would be some concern if people are going to the upper level and you're having to compete against those folks. We know that the difference between you and someone who might be medaling in an Olympic game may only be a 1% difference, right?
That's very, very true. In that case, I would hope that the baseline levels are returned to an average state. Nothing that is advantageous to anyone else. I think as long as you make it as fair as possible, and of course as long as it is purely medicinal, I don't really see the problem.
And so let's shift off of PEDS for a moment here. What are some of the other challenges that you've had as a professional athlete, whether they're personal or relational, with coaches and teammates? There are a lot of things that have to go right for you to reach your goals. And what are some of those things that step in that create those barriers that people may not even think about from a day-to-day basis?
Sure. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's really you got to make your own luck. I think you leave that collegiate system, and all of a sudden you leave having all your friends around you. You leave having your hand held, and every class is there, and you just got to go to school, and everything's so structured and regimented for you. You really have to take control of your day and manage your time, and really not coach yourself by any means, but listen to your coach. But your coach, I mean, my coach has 25 other athletes right now that he gives 100% to, and so you really have to make decisions because your coach can only be in front of you for 2 hours of the day. You still got 22 other hours to make good use for. So I'd say some of the biggest challenges are the fact that, I mean, you got to stay healthy. That's the hardest part. You got to train so much harder just to, I mean, once you go past the collegiate level, I mean, you got to make another big jump. You know, it's not just one, you got to get better. And to do that, you got to train hard and you got to stay healthy. And that's always a fine line. You're always balancing between, you know, absolute fitness and total destruction. So, yeah, I'd say it's just making good decisions all the time, eating right, sleeping right, the people you decide to associate with, and really just keeping the desire there, because after you've graduated college, I mean, you've done this for a long time, most athletes, and you got to find love in it. You got to find joy in it every day. You got to find purpose and meaning in it, because if you don't, it's going to really become a job, and you can't reach a high level if this is just a job for you. It's got to be a lifestyle.
Yeah, so how do you do that? It's an excellent point that obviously your sport in particular, there's very few that make big money in it. So we can't solely look towards external rewards as a motivator. So what are those things that you use to do the work that isn't just on a weekly basis, it's a multi-times a day that you're getting after it and making those tough decisions because your body is your sport. And unlike baseball where maybe you could put on 10 pounds and be okay, that's not the sport that you operate in. So how do you drive yourself in every moment of every day to do that?
I mean, it's not a hard decision. I mean, if I don't do it, one of my competitors will. I always just tell myself that. I get out of bed and I know I got to go for a morning run before weights, and I think, you know, gosh, I do not want to do this today, but I know if I don't, someone else will, and someone else will run the times that I want to be running. So, you know, to this point, it's been fun. I've run 3:52 for a mile. I never thought I'd do that, and as much as that makes me excited, it just makes me curious. I want to know just how far I can go. It's told me that everything I've done has been worth it. It's been worthwhile for sure. So it's when I'm out running, there's nowhere else I want to be. I picture running 3:49 for a mile. I picture running 3:46 one day and breaking the American record. So it's stuff like that. Just simple dreams, really, that keep you motivated, that keep you inspired.
And in order to do that, are you always in the here and now, in the present, or do you start thinking about life after running and starting to scaffold some of your next career? Because even the most successful athletes, your careers aren't forever, not compared to, you know, a career as a dentist or something like that, right? So
yeah. No, I think I'm always thinking about the future. I have a wife, I have a family that I need to take care of, and that's always something that's on my mind. It governs a lot of my decisions today. But at the same time, I know that if I commit myself to running as best I can, you know, I'm good to people, things will work out just fine. So I'm not too worried about that.
Great. And we talk about these strains of the games, all the things that come up especially when you're traveling, right? And you've traveled a whole lot for races and track races. And what are some of those things you have to manage when you're on the road that come up that many people don't even realize are part of that existence in order for you to actually toe the line and be ready and be prepared and have nullified all those things that can get in the way and stop your performance?
Sure, it's funny that you say that, because few people know that one of my biggest fears in the world is flying, and I have to fly an awful lot for my job. It's always kind of a strange thing to have to hop on a plane with about 2 inches of legroom in front of you. You've got an 11-hour flight. You're crossing 18 different time zones, it feels like, and you've got to race 2 days later, which is actually about 1 day later. And it's hard, you know. It's not like you land and you just go to a desk and you're signing papers or you're in a cubicle or something like that. Like, your body has to be in prime fighting shape because all your competitors will be there ready waiting for you. So, you know, ultimately there are things you can control and things you can't control. And, you know, control the controllables as best you can and don't sweat the other stuff. You got to be flexible. You got to be able to adapt. There have been times where I've been delayed in airports and stuck there for 8 hours, and you can't stress about it because ultimately that'll do you no good. You can't do anything about it. Just like, I mean, almost just like flying. I mean, there's nothing you can do. So you really just got to relax and try and find enjoyment in little things. You get stuck in an airport, go talk to someone. Go have a bite to eat that you've never had before. Make the best of it.
And what about, obviously some of your competitors don't handle it quite so smoothly. What are some of the things you've seen out there when things go wrong? Have you watched other athletes kind of melt down before they ever hit the line? And not to name names, but certainly, you know, these stories are interesting as well.
Yeah, you know, I haven't seen too many real disasters in the sport. I think ultimately, if you get to this stage, you're pretty level-headed, and you figured out how to balance things fairly well. So I've been pretty fortunate in the fact to associate with people who usually just keep their cool and go along for the ride.
And what about the sport in general? I know this winter there was some angst at the indoor championships over some of the appeals procedures and some of those things. What needs to happen for people to feel like there's a system in place that they trust, or is that just a few people who have concern? Where is the sport at these days?
I think transparency. Transparency is the name of the game now. I think the USATF does so much for athletes, professional athletes, helping them get into meets, helping them showcase themselves, giving them a platform, giving track and field a platform to show, that we have so many incredible athletes, so many great stories, and so many incredible performances that the general public just aren't aware of. And the USATF gives us a chance to get that out there, which is good for everyone involved. But also, I think more transparency needs to happen. I think if you make a rule, you need to stick by it. You need to give explanations. You need to clarify there on the spot on that day, not months later, because that helps instill trust from the public right up to the corporate offices. So yeah, I would say transparency is the name of the game between everyone, athletes, coaches, and all the rule makers involved.
Well said. There's a lot of research support to say that what you're saying makes all the sense in the world in terms of what is needed in any sport to have that type of trust. And some of your other fellow athletes, someone like Nick Symmonds, has been really vocal about rights around sponsorship and some of those things. Any perspective to share? Again, it's a sport that, like you said, you have a family, and that's part of your equation. Are there things that should change over time in a perfect world to allow you to do your sport without as many financial constraints, or is it okay as is?
I'm a big believer that if you are extremely ambitious, you're going to find a way to make things work. But do I think this sport can capitalize more? Just like some of the other sports, larger sports do, i.e. NASCAR? Absolutely. I think we could open the doors a little bit and get the ball rolling elsewhere. Bring in more money for the athletes, more money for the sponsors, and ultimately just grow the sport more. I think so many kids do this track and field thing. So many high schoolers, and it has the potential there. Back in the '60s, back in the '70s, track and field was the premier sport. I mean, people came in thousands and thousands because it was real, and I think that genuine competitive nature, anyone can watch track and field and get something out of it. I mean, it's enjoyable to watch, regardless of your age, regardless of your economic stance, doesn't matter. So, I think this sport can grow a lot more. I think with the right moves made, more sponsors can be brought in, and I think it would be good for all involved.
In terms of the presentation at a track meet, are you more of a traditionalist, where you like the fact that track's been done basically the same way for the past 60 or 70 years, or would you like to see cheerleaders in the stands and jumbotrons and mascots and those kind of things that we see in minor league baseball or the NBA or other places?
Honestly, that's a great question. I think you got to understand that athletes are on the track pursuing their dream. But I'm not disillusioned by any means. When I step on the track, I aim to entertain. Everything I do, everything I say, I'm there to give people a memory. I'm there to make an impression. I'm there to put on a show. And the more that track and field can do that and make an event entertaining for people, the better off we'll be. Gambling on athletes, let's do it. I mean, beer gardens at the meets, yes, absolutely. Fireworks, the whole lot. I mean, make it an absolute show. Make it a treat. Make it something people are fired up about on more than just one level. I mean, people go to track meets to see athletes, to see people perform, to put on spectacles. That's just one part of it, I think. Make it something more. Make it interactive. Make it something more. That's all I'd say.
What's the wildest idea that's occurred to you? You get a lot of time to think when you're out training. What's the most novel idea? And if you have to keep it close to the vest because you don't want to steal it, I understand. But what should the world know track and field should be about if you were to share your inner thoughts here?
Inner thoughts on that, I've always thought, I've heard Nick say this, and I agree with him wholeheartedly that if he gambled on the athletes, that would just add a little bit of entertainment while still keeping it totally clean and ensuring that no level of silly corruption or anything like that gets involved. But you just got to make it fun for people. Give them something to become invested in. Really put the athletes' stories out there. Get involved with the athletes. Find out what makes each of these incredible athletes tick, why they're out there running. Because I guarantee you're going to find some phenomenal motivations within these athletes, whether it be a family member or some sort of historic background that keeps them going. I mean, there are ways for an athlete to connect with an athlete, which makes a performance that much more meaningful and significant. And I think if you can find a way to tap into that and to relate an athlete to a fan, to a spectator, and it's like the spectator will be racing just like the athlete is.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. One of the things that sometimes troubles me from more of a sport management standpoint is the idea that so often the narrative is all about you all getting world records, U.S. records, world best, season best, etc. But that doesn't always happen. The weather is not always going to cooperate. The time of year is not always right for you all to do that. But if you're talking about a race, right, and the narrative is about battle and background and these kind of things, I think you have a much more compelling story to watch at that point.
I agree.
So any final thoughts that you want to share on whether it's any of the topics we've touched on already or anything else on your mind while you have a bully pulpit here to share your thoughts and ramblings? This is the time to do it now.
Not really, honestly. I think the sport is on an upward trajectory. I think the momentum is there. The potential is there. We have the greatest sport in the world, in my opinion. We have throwers, we have jumpers, we have sprinters, we have distance runners, and I think that the athletes need to stick together, absolutely. The ceiling really, the potential is there, and the sport just needs to keep growing through positive leadership, transparency, and goals. And I think if we all stay together, we help to grow this sport together, sky's the limit.
So we mentioned the power of narrative, and certainly people on this show have gotten to know you a little bit better, but if they really want to get to know your narrative, what are the ways they can follow you and your career if they aren't already doing so? What are all the ways, whether it's Twitter or, I don't know if you put YouTube videos up or FlowTrack or what else, but what are all the ways they can follow you so that you gain a following here today as well beyond what you already have?
Sure, yeah. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I promise you'll like what you see. Go at Jordan McNamara. I try to put up really cool videos, really cool pictures, really cool content all the time, so check me out.
Great. Well, thank you so much for spending time here today. This will go out all around the world, and you can share it as you wish as well. And anytime you want to come back on, just let me know.
Cool. Thank you so much, Josh.
You bet.